loses 39 billion with a B. Can we turn rural hospital workforces into cyber experts? Why we need more transparency around breaches? Dragos gives us a postmortem. More moons, blackberries, and Gandalf. Then we've got 6 micro interviews to share that were broadcast live from RSA last month. We've got Ashley Leonard from Syxsense talking about reducing organizational attack surface. Michaël Lakhal from OneSpan discusses the challenges of managing identities for automobiles. Eve Mahler from ForgeRock chats about automotive security. I might have gotten something a little mixed up there. Jason Rolleston from Carbon Black talks about CISO priorities and their new XDR offering. Mickey Bresman from Semperis talks about practical steps to improve Active Directory resilience. Dave Merkel from Expel discusses vulnerability prioritization. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
When organizations face poor web performance, challenges building modern applications at scale, or need to reduce operational and development costs, they turn to Fastly. Fastly's distributed edge network means your business can unleash its growth potential without worrying about scaling your infrastructure, whether for growth of users, transaction volume, or geographic expansion. Get the speed, security, and edge cloud innovation you need to deliver profitable and engaging experiences. Visit securityweekly.com/Fastly for more information or to speak to an expert. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National No Dirty Dishes Day. I may or may not be celebrating that here. We still have some work to do in the kitchen. This is episode 318, recorded on Thursday, May 18th, 2023. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Master of Marketing, the Mayor of Mayhem. Once again, back is the incredible Tyler Shields. How are you, Tyler?
Hey, Adrian. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you again. Dishes. I have no dishes in my sink right now because I have 2 teenage children that I get to do them all.
I also have 2 teenage children.
Then why do you have dishes, Adrian?
Because I'm failing to make them do the dishes. Yeah, clearly. Yeah, we get some of it knocked out today. We usually do a pretty good job of it, but they got piled up over the last week. I just finished B-Sides Knoxville last week, so I've been recovering from that. It's a significant amount of effort to pull off a big event like that. We had biggest turnout ever by a long shot. You know, I think we maybe had 200 people turn out last year, and last week we had closer to 400.
Wow, man, that's crazy. If you think about the numbers at RSA this year and the numbers they're predicting at Black Hat, is this the year that cyber conferences come back in full force and full vogue? Everybody wants to get back out and meet and greet and do all those fun things?
I think so. In 2 days, on May 20th, there are no less than 5 B-Sides happening simultaneously this Saturday.
Yeah. It's that time, man. Everybody wants to get back out and be face-to-face.
Yeah, and RSA was great. Got to see a ton of people that I haven't seen in forever, so it was nice. There's still other people that I haven't seen in person in a while, like Tyler and Katie.
Like me, that's right.
Even though we're on this podcast, we don't see each other in person very often. And speaking of Katie, she is the Czar of Zero Trust, a captain of content. How you doing, Katie?
I am well. I was not at RSA, for which I was grateful because many of my coworkers came home with COVID, and nobody needs to be sick, especially in the spring. It's so lovely out, but glad to be here. There's nobody who can give me COVID here. Just my cat and my dog.
Yeah, and there was some COVID going around at RSA. Definitely heard about some of that. You know, I know our keynote for B-Sides Knoxville this year was Casey Ellis, one of the co-founders of BugCrowd, and he got hit with it halfway through the week, so he had to cancel most of his RSA stuff. after Tuesday of RSA. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, and
being sick is never fun. It doesn't matter what it is; it's just never fun.
Yeah. The strains might not be as deadly or as bad, but it's still not a fun time. And I still hear a lot of long COVID. A lot of brain fog, taking a while to recover from it. And there's I don't mind being sick, but you mess with my mind, you mess with my head. If I can't think straight, I get pissed off.
Oh, that's a good thing to have in our back pocket.
What's that?
Yes, good to know.
Oh, like knowing how to piss me off? What are you planning?
You didn't say piss you off. No. You just said mess with your mind.
Okay.
We're not planning anything. Don't worry, Adrian. We're not planning anything at all, I swear.
Not yet.
All righty. Good time for a quick announcement here. Security Weekly community, our teams from Security Weekly and SE Media were on site at RSA Conference 2023, delivering in-depth reporting, analysis, and interviews from the conference. If you were unable to join us in person or didn't manage to catch our video live stream from Broadcast Alley, access to all of our RSA conference coverage, including video interviews with leaders from the community. It was like an incomplete sentence. Visit securityweekly.com/RSAC. And as I mentioned during the intro, we're going to be showing some of those 6 of those micro interviews today, rebroadcasting those, and we're going to continue to rebroadcast them on most of our shows through the rest of this month, through the rest of May. And then I'm really excited to get back to interviews in June, because one of the first interviews we're having, I believe it's June 8th, we're going to have an AI special where we've got 2 interviews talking about generative AI, one with Daniel Miessler and then another one with Alex Bagrin, I think is his name. He's the founder of a company that basically makes turnkey large language model AI, workflow automation AI solutions for companies directly. And that's I know we're pretty excited about those trends and to see what people are building there. So
man, the weekly news write-up that I've been doing for CyberWhy is I cannot get away from AI. It is so hot right now. I don't think I've seen a trend this hot in 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back through our show notes, it's just like I created a new category for it. Like AI trends is a new category for our news segments. And sometimes I feel bad about it, and I sit back and I kind of reflect and I'm like, no, we've got to talk about this. Like, this is just hugely important. And it definitely dominated the conversation at RSA. So jumping into the news, check out securityweekly.com/ESW318 if you want to follow along as we go through the news. I didn't have a ton of time to put notes in here, but we've got a good number of stories. We've got 21 stories here. And most of the big security startup fundings, I think got announced just before RSA or during RSA. And now we've got some odd ones. We actually have 2 public companies raising money here, both Cybeats and Iron Mountain. Iron Mountain raised $1 billion in debt, and that's I don't really play in that space. I don't understand this kind of fundraising very much, so it kind of goes over my head.
Yeah, I didn't do the analysis on the Iron Mountain one. I'm going to guess it's probably a bond issuance, senior notes, senior bond issuance. And they're just levering up, right? They're levering up the business. Typically, it's to give them a little bit more operating cash capital so that they can make moves. I don't think, assuming they were not over-levered before the billion, I don't think this is a bad idea. And the reason why I don't think it's a bad idea is you want to lever your business in a down market. And for those that don't know, in financial terms, leverage is adding debt to your books so that you can have additional investable capital to make money on or to grow your business with. So it's called levering or leveraging up the business. And it's usually pretty smart to lever when you hit the bottom of the market, because you can get your leverage at a cheap interest rate. You then get the investable capital to either do stock buybacks with, if it's a public company, or to invest in the growth of the business itself. So I'm not surprised. And, $1 billion, I don't know what Iron Mountain's market cap is, but I'm assuming it's a double-digit billions market cap or more. It's not a ton of leverage to add. So assuming they did the smart math on it, could be a really good play.
That was the sound of me Googling Iron Mountain market cap. 16 billion.
Did you hear it? Sound like cricket. 16 billion. Yeah, so I don't know what their debt ratio is now. Their debt to market cap ratio is right now. That's always a good question. But listen, I'm not passing judgment on whether it's a smart move, just kind of educating the audience on why a company would take $1 billion in debt out.
Yeah. I think kind of more in our court, more interesting. Huntress raises a $60 million Series C. I believe they're kind of in the MDR space, focused on, I believe they have like an EDR product, that they've created an MDR service out of, if I'm not mistaken. And they got a bunch. Yeah.
They got a bunch of products. I actually know them well.
Because they kind of pivoted, didn't they? Towards
one of my fractional CMO.
Didn't they start as an automated pen testing type of firm?
You can't talk, Tyler.
Nope, I'm shut up. Put me on mute.
Denial
go ahead,
Katie.
They might have. I don't know their history. I even tried talking slowly, Adrian. Hoping it would get out. Katie, I don't know the history of the firm. That's a great question. They may have pivoted, but I do know that they have a broad product line that really targets SMB to mid-market with like a one-shop fits all kind of MDR, XDR. We provide cybersecurity if you're a law firm, a small law firm, or a small dental office. So their go-to-market is largely through partners, through MSPs, MSSPs that then sell on their behalf. That's what I know about them. And I also know they're doing very well in that space. They're targeting a market that's fairly untapped. One of my fractional CMO companies that I work with competes with them. So that's why I know Huntress fairly well.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen more than a few pivots into this kind of boil the ocean for the SMB. I don't want to say boil the ocean is kind of a negative way of saying it, but but that's kind of what you have to do in that market, right? Like an SMB is not going to buy 27-point products.
Yep, and what makes it really an interesting play on top of it is there's no direct to enterprise sale here. There's no direct motion. There's no PLG motion. The only way you get to the mass quantities of buyers, because the dollar signs are low, right? They're right. Hundreds of dollars to maybe $1,000 a month size deals, right? So you have to be a ticket taker, and the only way you can get the high enough volume to have that low of a deal size is to actually go through a channel play. And so most of these vendors target the MSPs that will, hey, I serve the greater Raleigh, Charlotte area of North Carolina, and I sell to 500 or 700 small to mid-sized businesses, and I maintain the security for those 700 businesses. It's a very interesting go-to-market model.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That it would be 100% channel, but yeah. So I mean, that's a good size Series C. Like we've seen MSSPs really blow up, and it's interesting to see it blow up on the SMB side of the market as well, not just the big folks out there, the mid-size.
That's right.
Yeah, growth from 1,500 partners and 25,000 customers to more than 4,000 partners and nearly 100,000 customers.
That makes total sense. They're saying they got 4,000 small to mid-sized regional managed service providers, localized IT providers that resell their products. That's why they're killing it.
Wow. That's a lot of 4,000 relationships to manage. Holy crap.
100%. Yeah, that's the hard part about building that go-to-market is you're not just selling to a couple hundred customers. You're selling to a few thousand MSPs that are then selling to 100,000 customers. It's a massive volume play.
They must have a dev team, like one dev team just working on security technology and stuff like that, and another dev team just working on like the portals and stuff like that allow their partners to manage their customers. Like I bet that's a totally separate development effort there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
because it's got to be self-service.
If you didn't design your product to be MSP channel from the ground up, you would have had to retrofit a massive amount of technology in your product to support that go-to-market model. It doesn't work. Like, you can't just create a product and then go, oh, let's retro this back to supporting 1,000 or 2,000 or even 4,000 partners. Like, you have to have thought of that up front. You have to have designed that right into the product.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if that was something that they had done, those numbers, like that change in just the last year, like that's more than one partners every day, 365,
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not going to do that manually. You got to have some kind of software, some kind of automation to enable that. All right. Moving on. Let's see what else we've got here. Keeper security, there's not really any details on this, but they had some funding, minority growth equity investment from Summit Partners. So Keeper's more than just a password database. You know, they have like a DevOps secret security secrets tool as well. So yeah, interesting to see. You know, I think most of the companies in this market, it looks like they have a privileged access management product now as well, Keeper PAM. So yeah, all the identity folks that I've seen seem to be doing pretty well. Like it's a good market for them, whether you're doing password databases or authentication and authorization. You know, most of these guys seem like they're doing really well. But we've got some acquisitions here and some acquisition rumors. So
rumors are my favorite.
I don't know. Like nobody's ever really explained to me like if this is exclusively an Israeli thing. But I've seen this so many times over my career where, you know, and there's just a handful. There's Calcalis Tech. You know, there's a handful of media companies out of Israel that will post these kinds of articles, but it looks like part of the negotiation process that they will leak information about an acquisition and they'll throw out some numbers, you know, I guess to see if they stick or like that somehow influences the negotiation. I'm not sure how that works, but I've seen it enough times that it's definitely a trend. And I don't think I've ever seen that on the U.S. side here.
Oh, it happens on the U.S. side too. It happened to a company I was involved with a while back. So here's the interesting thing about that. Think of it this way: if more than two people or more than one person knows something, it's impossible to keep a secret. I'm sure you've heard that saying. So there is a fair number of these things that are just, hey, 20 people know about the project. Somebody's going to leak something to somebody who tells somebody else who lets it get out. So that's
these feel intentional though, don't they?
But that being said, there can be intentional techniques such as, hey, we've got one suitor. We're working with Cisco, random company. We're working with Cisco. They're suiting. We're in negotiations. We're talking about it. I've signed something that says I can't say anything to anybody. It's, you know, complete non-disclosure. It's under lockdown. But if it happened to leak, I don't know where it came from. And then two other companies came in and gave offers. The idea is it drives up the overall valuation for the company being acquired because now you have four suitors where you may have had one before who didn't know you were in play and you were in lockup. So that's another thing that often happens is just to get more buyers to the table to make an offer.
Gotcha. And Laminar, I'm trying to remember, are they like a CSPM?
Believe so.
Yeah, I think they do something with cloud security.
Multi-cloud data security platform.
There you go.
Multi-cloud DSPM.
Oh, DSPM.
Yeah, LaminarSecurity.com. Data transforms your business. Laminar secures it. It's a multi-cloud data security posture manager.
Okay, well, that's interesting because one of our other acquisitions is another DSPM. IBM picks up Polar. And we had one of Polar's founders on Enterprise Security Weekly a little while back. I don't remember exactly which episode that was. But if you want to go back and check that one out, I can look it up real quick. Let me see how quickly I can find it.
So while you're looking that up with regards to the Polar acquisition, it says IBM plans to integrate Polar Security's DSPM technology within its Guardium family of leading data security products. It looks like IBM's picked this up to extend the cloud version of what they do, similar to the value proposition from Laminar, a more cloud-centric data security posture management style system, compared to Guardium, which is a little bit more of a traditional DLP model.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it looks like it was episode 286. We interviewed Roy Yakovi, and yeah, that was back in August 25th, 2022.
Yeah, that looks like this is just what you were talking about a minute ago. They've got, quote, multiple suitors, that's written on the release, and maybe hoping, hey, maybe there'll be another, a third group or a fourth group.
Get some competition going.
Not a terrible strategy the way media works these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can tell you though, I can tell you, Adrian, it can jump back and bite you in the ass. Because a lot of times when you do that, if nobody else comes to the plate, you've offended, even though they can't prove it was you, you've offended your original suitor, who will then walk away from a deal. And that's it. That's exactly, rumor has it, because I wasn't read into the situation, but that is a situation that I've run into in the past in previous companies, that somebody leaked it, whether it was the founders trying to get additional people to the table or it was an accidental leak. No one ever told me. But then my understanding was that the original suitor was like, oh, no, we don't play those games. You play those games, we're gone. Yeah. And they killed the whole deal.
Burned a bridge. Yeah.
Yep. And I don't know if that's what happened to my company or not. It was that I was no longer working there. So it was all rumors.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. It's these aren't small amounts of money, but it's amazing to me how emotional and effects like FOMO factor into these types of things, you'd think it would be a little bit more I don't know the right term, a little more sterile, doing a deal for $250 million or $1 billion or something like that.
All emotion. It's almost all emotion, Adrian. Now that being said, listen, it depends on the stage of acquisition you're doing. If you're acquiring a later stage company that has significant traction and significant track record of multi-years of growth and P&L and all the data to back the growth of the business, it's very academic in that scenario. And that's where most of your private equity buyers get into play. They just look at all the numbers and they go, can this cash flow me for 3 years, 5 years to return the investment, whatever. And that's a late stage. When you're talking early stage stuff, it's all strategic. It's all about, do you guys think that this is going to make your company, the buyer's company, better? Do you think it will? Really, that's what it tends to boil down to. What caught me about the Laminar piece, though, set to be acquired means they're probably going to be acquired. 200 to 250. That's a tiny little number. Nothing would get acquired with their level of buzz and reach that they achieved. To get 2 to 250 now, 2 years ago, that was a $500 million exit at least, right? It's just nobody would sell at 200 to 250. You'd sit on it for 2 more years, guaranteed, until you got big enough to get 500. What this shows me is that we're in hard times for younger cyber companies right now, and they're trying to find ways to either exit it at a nice little single or a double. Listen, they got $70 million invested to Laminar, and they just sold it for, let's call it 240 for 242. Let's call it 210. Let's call it a 3x, right? That makes the investors, okay, we got our money back plus a little bit of interest. Definitely not a good exit, but this market is tough right now for M&A.
I mean, that might be, 3 or 4x might be a good exit in this market. I don't know, because Polar raised.
It is a good exit.
Yeah, Polar was just seed, 8.5 million, and I would guess there's no numbers on that yet. I'm sure that'll eventually come out, but I would guess 50 or 60.
I'm going to crystal ball sub 50. I'm going to crystal ball sub 50 for Polar.
Okay.
Yeah. It all depends on the revenue.
We'll call it a bet. We'll check back in on it later.
All right, the over/under's 50. I got the under. You got the over.
Yeah, I got the over.
Yeah, they're saying the non-AI market is down 58%.
It's crushed.
Yeah. The non-AI market. Now we're dividing the whole market into AI and not AI.
Yeah, well, I just wrote a piece on it, so I'm like, I have data up the wazoo, but they said it was the worst market since something like, I can't remember if it was 2016 or 2017. We're still early in 2023, so it is yet to be seen, but just looking at the trends, this was, I think, on TechCrunch or CB, one of them. It's down so much. Even AI was down this month, this quarter from last quarter. So people are getting scared because, when this whole thing started, they said, 18 months to 2 years. And now we're over the 2-year mark and people are still saying, 18 months to 2 years.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I thought I know I added it. I don't know why it's not here, but your piece should have been in the show notes this week. So if you want to talk about that a bit, I totally intended for us to, but I'm just not seeing it here. So that's on me.
Tell us about your research, Katie. What'd you write about?
Yeah.
So my latest article was about the AI market, and it was entitled "Is AI the Next Zero Trust?" So in a nutshell, it was because we come on this show every week and you two fanboys are all like, AI, AI, AI. And there's a flip side to that as well. Like,
how dare you compare zero trust?
How dare she?
Well, Tyler's like the AI fanboy and the anti-zero trust boy, but it's just there's so much likeness to what happened, at least how it's playing out in the media and marketing. I think the end result is going to be different. I do want to caveat that because Tyler, I know you read the first part of my piece, but you didn't get the second part because Tyler's mentioned in there. But there's so many parallels between what happened when zero trust burst onto the scene, said with sarcasm, in 2016, because it, as a concept, had been around since the early 2000s. It was coined as a term in 2009. Then, all of a sudden, it started coming into use in like 2016, 2017, 2018, and everybody's like, zero trust is going to change the world. Everything's going to be zero trust. And then it just became a marketing term. Now it's evening out and people understand what it is better. And I think we're at an inflection point with AI too. I think people still don't quite get it. There are still companies out there calling machine learning AI. There's still people out there who think robots are taking over the world. It's not happening yet. And there are some really, really big problems that we have to fix before we let the robots loose. I know, Tyler, you're going to be the first one to have a robot in your house doing your work, 100%. Talking to us on this show.
And I'll also be the first one that gets killed by a robot, just saying.
Yeah. Awesome. Maybe it'll happen on camera during a podcast recording.
You could only wish, because the viral nature of that would just skyrocket you guys.
And of course, you're thinking of the ratings.
It's funny. All about the ratings.
So that is now story number 19, Katie. I got that added to the show notes here. We now have 22 stories.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it might take a minute for it to show.
It was really interesting for me to look at the data because, and especially, I was pretty lucky that CB put out their first quarter results the day before it was supposed to be published, so I had to go back in and write some new stuff. So it was pretty cool to look at what's actually happening compared to the amount of noise you hear about it. And, there is a lot of noise. I'm not saying there's not, but to see what's actually happening in the finance market is pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And you made a great comment in our back channel chat here, when I was talking about, you think there'd be logically that there'd be less emotions in some of these huge deals. But yeah, and you said, haven't you watched Succession? But yeah, between that, digging into Theranos and WeWork, and we actually have a story here about SoftBank, Masayoshi-san, who dumped a ton of money into WeWork, and just I don't know if it was him personally, but SoftBank just dumped a ton more money, another $100 million into Cybereason. We talked about that last week. So is it any surprise that they're down $39 billion?
No, it's not a surprise at all. As a matter of fact, if you think back to shows we were doing in 2021, and I'm sure if we dig them up, you'll hear my commentary about the amount of capital going into cybersecurity startups, or security startups in general, not even cyber, just technology startups in general, had hit ludicrous speed. Like, they hit Plaid, man. Everything was going crazy where it didn't matter. Here's $100 million for you, $100 million for you, $700 million for you, $1 billion for you. It got loony. And when that starts to happen, somebody's going to be left holding the bag. And it looks like SoftBank was left holding a lot of bags.
I've heard Masayoshi Son's investment strategy described as basically like good vibes. You just throwing it. I mean, one of the biggest funds that's out there, right? You know, between this and Tiger Global, these are huge funds. Yeah.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about that, there's two really cool parts about that. One is, their investment strategy really was index technology. It doesn't matter what it is. We're going to buy into it if it's a tech company. And the idea here is that one of them that hits escape velocity and turns into the next Wiz or the next whatever $20 billion exit, we're going to win enough on that one to write off all our failures, right? That was the investment philosophy. Yeah. And when you're talking small dollar signs, that actually tends to work. When you're talking big dollar signs, you quickly get capped out on the ability to hit the wins on those, right? And so that's where their investment strategy fell down. That's where they got burned. The question is, can Tiger or SoftBank turn it around? I think the results of this is, from an investing world, your $1 billion plus funds are going to be few and far between going forward. You're just not going to see investors pulling together $1 billion, $2 billion, $10 billion for projects anymore, because the upside's not there in a power law model. So what you're finding is the rise of the micro investor, the folks that are raising 10, 15, 20 cap and putting that to work in a very focused vertical approach. Because then if they hit their one winner, they get a massive return. The returns are almost unlimited.
Right. Yeah, that's and man, things have shifted so fast between the market shifting fast and generative AI. Like it's been a heck of a. I'm glad we have a weekly show. I think it'd be tough to follow some of these trends if we were only on once a month. Because we'd be contradicting ourselves constantly. That's not often enough to even follow some of these trends.
Yeah, the changes are super fast right now. It's absolutely out of control.
Yeah.
I mean, and the one thing that hit me yesterday, I know this is stupid to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, and whoever's watching is going to be like, wow, that was really stupid. It took her this long. But investors aren't necessarily investing in the next big tech or the next big thing to make the industry better, more efficient, whatever. They're investing in the next thing they think can make them money. And sometimes those things go hand in hand. But sometimes they're just betting on the buyer community going hog wild over something that they don't even think will be hog wild.
Like enterprise browsers.
Enterprise browsers.
Old die on that hill. Yeah, apparently there's a ton of them now. There's like over a dozen. I think Island and Talon are still the really big ones. But I was chatting with somebody the other day, and they're like, oh, no, there's all kinds that are like, they're not building the browser from the ground up, but they have like browser extensions and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see that play out. Mm-hmm. We got one more acquisition here. We got Absolute Software, which has been around for a long time. They've got more products than I was aware of. Like, the one thing I think of when I think Absolute is the LoJack for laptops thing, where they're baked into BIOSes, and you try to recover a stolen laptop basically, because you can't remove them from the BIOS. But yeah, you go to the webpage and there's a ton of other stuff there as well. But yeah, that looks like, is that a PE deal? What is that?
Yeah, it's a post-IPO PE deal. So Absolute's a publicly traded company, and it's taking a majority interest. I don't know if it's a complete take private or a majority interest. I imagine it's a complete take private. I think it is by Crosspoint Capital. They're taking the whole thing private. They're going to respin it, probably rework a few things, add some leverage, and then you'll see them come back out public in another few years when the market comes back. That's why this is such a hot time for PE take privates, because the market is so depressed. Take privates that happen now, you don't even have to really win. The market's going to rebound in N years, and then you don't even have to change anything in the company. You just hold it and then sell it off.
Yeah, makes sense. As long as whatever that company's doing isn't going away or anything like that. I think of I don't know, companies who store data backups in mountains.
That's where all data backups go, right in the mountains.
Subtle reference. Subtlety is my forte.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Let's see. So, a couple of trends here. The America's Most Connected Cities thing came from a weird place. So I actually reached out to Ookla, who, if you've ever gone to speedtest.net, they own speedtest.net. So they've got this huge amount of data on internet speeds all over the world. And somebody pitched me a story that was basically saying, like, Tennessee was the most, I think was the second or third most connected state in the U.S. I was like, that doesn't sound right. Number one on that list was South Dakota. I was like, what?
That don't sound right.
So, but there was no, whatever PR team sent me this thing, there was no link to it online. Like, it was all just in the email. Like, I couldn't find any of these stats shared anywhere online. So I reached out to Ookla and I was like, what do you think about these stats? Do you have any data that can help prove this out? And they basically sent me this, what I've linked to here. They don't have state level stuff, but they do have city level. And then I got another separate story pitch on like who's falling for the most scams, like state by state, who's getting hit the most. And there comes South Dakota again, like punching up to the top of the list. Like, the highest average loss per person of any state was South Dakota, which was like $23,000 per person lost in ransomware, romance scams, like all that kind of stuff, like personal level.
So what you're saying, Adrian, is giving high-speed internet access to stupid people is not a good idea.
I think you just insulted everybody from South Dakota, but okay.
I just pissed off like all 7 people of our audience that live in South Dakota, though.
I think that's probably a high number, but yeah.
I just kid. I kid South Dakota people. I'm making jokes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really weird combination of like I just get all this data thrown at me, and like the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, how complete is this data? How biased is this data? What's the methodology? And there's just not a lot of details on it, so I just included that just because there's a lot of stuff when you're running a podcast or doing marketing for a company. Like some of the crap that makes its way into your inbox can be kind of interesting. Like funny, interesting, like maybe not useful, interesting, but that was some of the funny, interesting stuff that hit my inbox. And thanks to Ookla for so quickly pointing me at some actual published data.
Yeah, well, I'll have you know, I live in one of the best cities for fixed broadband speeds down in Raleigh.
For broadband,
you want to say your full address on air too, Tyler?
You're listed for one of the worst for 5G availability, though.
Yeah, because I have broadband. I never leave my house. I live in Raleigh, so I don't ever have to leave the house. And no, Katie, I will not be saying my address because I might get emails or might get physical bomb mails from South Dakota. So no, I won't be telling.
Now you will, yeah.
Yeah.
So I learned like one of the most connected 5G places in the world apparently is Finland. And I'm guessing that's because it's really tough to roll fiber everywhere. Like it's big. There's inclement weather a lot of the year, so they just use 5G. Like 5G is your broadband in your home. 5G isn't just for mobile phones. Like you just use that for the whole home. That's your broadband up there, apparently. Random fact.
Well, when your average temperature in parts of your country is like 35 degrees, nobody wants to go outside and talk to anybody else.
Or 2 degrees if you're in that part of the world. That would be 2 degrees. There's somewhere around there.
That's true.
Celsius, yeah.
I just Googled it, and because I live in the U.S., it very kindly gave me Fahrenheit.
Yeah, right. So number 16, I thought you'd be interested in, Tyler. AI trends, BotSonic.
Yeah.
Build your own ChatGPT for your website.
Oh,
so this is something. This is something I predicted that would happen with generative AI, with large language models. Is basically it replaces your call centers, your support models, your knowledge base. Like you don't need a FAQ or a knowledge base anymore. You just feed all that information into a bot, and you just ask it a question, and it answers it.
Yeah, I'm not shocked or surprised at this at all. What I really want, and trust me, I've installed a bunch of them. I have probably like 2 or 3 installed locally, and I have signed up for some services ones. What I really want is this for my personal life. For every meeting face-to-face I do, every conversation I do online.
So you haven't found that yet?
I've tried. I was playing with 2 of them all day today. I've half rolled my own. There's nothing that's quite there yet, but there's a couple that show promise. And once they get to the point where they are really baked and working well, I will definitely let you know.
I thought Neeva was doing that. Are you familiar with Neeva?
I don't know. No, I'm not. How do you spell it?
So Neeva. So the idea of it is it would both be public internet search and private search. So you connect your data stores and stuff to it, and it allows you to search. So when you do a search, like you're not distinguishing searching my stuff and searching public stuff. It all just gets searched. You plug a search into their search bar. They replace Google as your search engine. But in addition to public results, you also get private results.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Thesis. Yeah, so that's a piece of what I want. But what I want is I want it to be smart. So what I want is I want to wake up every day and have in my inbox, or even if I have to open a URL to the service, I don't really care. But it'll say, hey, here's the meetings you have today. Here's the background with each person, the history. Oh, by the way, you haven't connected with Adrian in 2 months. It's time for you to connect with Adrian because whatever. And you guys were talking about this cool thing that was a great idea. I want that brain memory, right? I want a virtual assistant that is that level of detail, and nobody has it yet.
Don't you invest in startup companies?
Yes, please.
So start up your own damn company.
I don't invest. I don't build them. I invest in them. Although I do build them too. But yeah, I've thought about it. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the AI background. I needed an AI scientist to help me.
Well, I mean that's the beauty of building a business is you hire people, right? Find the smart people. But yeah, I mean that's got to be.
What though? I'll be honest with you. I'm behind. If I did it today, I'd be behind because there are 2 or 3 that are going in the right direction that are getting close, and it's going to happen.
That's what I was going to say. Like there got to be companies that are at least pointed in the direction of what you're describing.
For sure. Yeah. No. And that's why I'm not doing it myself, because one of them is going to get there and give me what I need. But the problem is right now I can sign up for, and I have signed up for 2 or 3 different like note-taking systems that connect up to Zoom and take all the notes and send you everything. I home-rolled my own, but that doesn't connect to a version of the same thing that does it for Gmail, and a version of the same thing that does it for Calendar, and a version of the same thing that does it for all my Google Docs or my Notion notes. Like everybody's still isolated in these silos for those 5 areas. Yeah. I want one ring to rule them.
That's a lot of access.
I don't care.
That's going to be
I'm not a security guy.
But yeah, no, that would be wonderful. Yeah.
I'll bet
totally
you, Adrian,
get what you're saying. Yeah.
I'll bet you it's here by the end of the year.
I'd be surprised if it wasn't at the speed things are. We were just talking about how fast things are moving. So we will cover it when it does on this podcast, and we'll get to see Tyler celebrate.
Absolutely. I would agree to that. You know what?
Perhaps he'll do double duty, because I think part of his mentioning this every week is hoping that somebody hears him and calls him or emails him, so that can become part of his chatbot, so he can be reminded to talk to them. And then he gets to.
If you want a customer and an evangelist in one, and maybe also an angel investor, here you go, folks. And you're building this product.
I will tell you.
One-stop shop.
I will tell you, if this happens by the end of the year, which I predict that it will, the next company that should be started, whether it's by me or somebody else, is security of that data. A company that can overlay, look into what that company is doing, and then give you a level of security in that that universe, so you can have a true personal privacy setup where it's like, no, this stuff doesn't get put into my executive AI. This stuff does, this stuff doesn't. Like, that would be the next phase, but that'll be next year. All right.
Some great predictions there. I can't wait to see some of that unfold. Yeah. So two things that are kind of related here. Number 13, why more transparency around cyber attacks is a good thing for everyone. This is one of my soapboxes I love to stand on. And then along with that, number 17 is a postmortem from Dragos, where they are very transparent and provide a bunch of details into an attack that affected them. But sounds like the attack didn't get very far. But the amount of details they gave, and they put this together, like this thing happened on May 8th, I think, and they had the full write-up ready on May 10th. So they smacked down this attack and wrote up the whole thing and published it in 2 days.
So my question on that, let's start with Dragos first, Adrian, before we go to your other soapbox.
Sure.
Why are you putting out a bunch of transparency on something that didn't actually result in an attack, a successful attack? I don't understand that. Am I missing something?
I think so. So it builds a lot of trust, like just transparency in general. And at the same time, it kind of shows their expertise in this area, because based on what they're selling is their expertise in, detection and response platforms. They also have visibility stuff, but they do a lot of IR and things like that. So this is just an opportunity for them to flex and basically show like here's who we are, here's what we do.
You took it there, Adrian. This is just an opportunity for them to flex. And that's why when I read this, I was kind of like, okay, great work, guys. I love it. Really good work. And you're putting out a good story. This feels to me like this was just an opportunity for them to flex. Because it's like, it is sales collateral. As long as we know what we're getting, then we can read it and be educated by it. That's wonderful. But let's not over-index into this thing and say, hey, the breach occurred and they were really good at finding it or whatever. This is just sales collateral. Really good sales collateral.
But you know what? I'm going to eat it up, because as much as people can share how attacks are happening, what tools they're using, what techniques they're using, there's just never going to be enough of that for me until it becomes regulated and required to have more transparency into how these attacks happen. Because the people getting attacked, there are very rarely any new attacks out there.
Yeah. Like
almost every ransomware case I look at, I'm like, that was a pen test I did in 2008. Yeah. Like step by step, exactly how a pen test was done 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And you fell for it.
So cyber marketers take note.
Yeah.
Cyber marketers take note, Adrian. All they got to do is just go to their SOC team and look up the most recent near breach, and let's write an article on it. No, and I'm serious. I'm not saying this tongue in cheek. Like that, most companies have that capability right now.
Yeah. True. Yeah, and we just need to get past this. I've got to hide anything that's negative. That happened to my company. Like even like Riot Games, who makes League of Legends, promised back in January that they would share the details of how the attack went down that they got hit with back in January, and they haven't done that yet. And I have not forgotten Riot. I'm still checking. I'm checking for that report.
Come on, Riot people, step up.
I do talks on this stuff, and I think it's one of the number one things that's missing. Like, we've got the people, we got the budget, we buy the products, but we need to study how failures happen in our industry. And to be able to do that, we need details of failures.
Or in this case, successes.
Exactly. Or successes. Exactly. And those really don't get shared because, again, there's the kind of the fear of, if I share how I stopped an attack, then that won't work anymore, or something like that. The fear that, that transparency will somehow ruin your good luck, right?
I agree. This is a sales tactic and, thought leadership, so to speak. And I also agree that there should be more sharing. But you got to remember, from a non-security point of view, there are a lot of companies. Dragos is a special type of company, right? They're a special type of company. They're not your typical company. There are going to be a lot of companies whose legal teams say
they have a particular set of skills, you might say.
Yeah.
And you're right. Right, Kate. NFW.
Special set of skills, Liam. But there are a lot of legal teams that will say absolutely not. And, that it's a non-security point of view. And from a security point of view, one thing could be great or right or whatever. But from the legal point of view, and you've got those people who are going to wield way more power. So there are going to be a lot of companies who can't because their arms are tied.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I think it is time to get into our squirrel stories.
Squirrel.
So number 22, Gandalf is basically like a capture the flag / training tool that company Lakera.ai put together, and they basically try to secure your getting a keyboard in the face. How rude. Yeah. For those listening, there are squirrels. There's a squirrel overlay on the screen, and we're messing with it. It's a visual gag. But so Lakera protects AI models and machine learning and stuff like that. Particularly large language models. So this is there's 7 levels here, and first level has no protection whatsoever. The large language model is given a secret and told not to share it. The first level, it's not told not to share it, so it's very easy to get past that. But there's 7 levels, and it gets increasingly more difficult to trick the large language model into giving up that secret. And I got to level 7 and I got stuck there. I got really frustrated because it took me like 30 minutes to get to level 7. And then I just could not make it past it, which I guess is the point of it. Like, if you get past it, they give you some swag. But, again, this is both marketing and a flex, them showing that the work that they do actually works. So I don't know.
Freaking love this. It is so cool. Such a smart idea. I just beat first level when, not that was hard, right, Adrian? Right. I think this is so, I don't even think this is a squirrel story. I think this is a killer story. I think this should be in the regular story list.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. No, I would agree with that. And it's a great way to get familiar with large language model AI if you haven't played around with it. So Gandalf.Lakera.ai. It's in the show notes. I think it's the final squirrel story. Go in there, see if you can get past level 7. First 10 people to get past it. I don't know if that's already happened, if 10 people have completed it, but they get some kind of special swag. I don't know what the special swag is.
And tweet at Adrian if you beat his time to get through all first 6 levels, or if you beat the 7th level faster than he could, because you haven't beat the 7th level, right?
Nope. I have not been able to complete it. I have a browser tab open somewhere that I refuse to close because then I have to go back to the beginning. But I wrote down I know all the passwords for the first 6.
So I will tell you, Adrian, I just tried to beat level 2 while we were talking, and I'm going to take full credit for this. Our show just overwhelmed them. They just got rate limited by Chat GPT and the API, so they can't make any more requests right now. So I'm going to say our live show did that. So just bear that in mind. Taking credit.
100%. It was us.
Yep.
All right, another squirrel story here. I am a sucker for gadgets, and I've been really getting into Beeper, which is kind of like a Trillion, if you remember that, or a Pigeon for 2023. Basically takes all your chats, consolidates them into one client. So WhatsApp, Twitter DMs, SMS, all the different places that you chat, all thrown into one client. I've been enjoying it. It's still kind of like it's not open to the public. It's like you have to sit in a queue to get access to it. And I've had access for about a month now, and I've been loving it. And just for fun, they put together this is not like a polished product. It's basically like something for hackers and people to play around with. There's not even a case on it. It's exposed breadboard. But they put together a device with an e-ink display, a lithium-ion battery flopping around on the back. Like I said, it doesn't even have a case. And they put a BlackBerry keyboard on it. And I just couldn't say no to that. It was $80 and I ordered one. And it's all powered by one of the small Raspberry Pi Zeros.
And it connects to all your chats?
Yeah, so there's a list. I mean, it doesn't support everything, but I think it does do Slack. It does do, let me find the main website here. iMessage, Facebook Messenger, Slack, Instagram, DMs. So there's a lot of places where you have chat with people in the DM. So it's not bringing tweets and Instagram posts to you. It's just the DM portion. LinkedIn DMs. Like I just use one client for all my DMs across LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, all these places. Just brings it into one place.
Very cool.
Yeah, because I've got like 17 apps on my phone. Oh, Discord also is another one. I've got like 17 apps on my phone just to chat with people. Google Chat's in there. Telegram's in there. Signal is in there.
Installing now.
Option.
Do you have that many people you want to talk to?
No.
Well, the funny thing is, like Facebook Messenger, my family. That's it. My sister, my mom, and my dad. That's the only people I use that for. So it's frustrating to have an app installed just to talk to 3 people. And some of these others, like WhatsApp, is kind of the same. Like I have some international friends who use WhatsApp. So there's like 5 people I use WhatsApp for. And then there's, another 3 on Instagram. And there's a ton of people on LinkedIn. I do a lot of messaging on LinkedIn, especially for this podcast. Like when I'm trying to find people to interview and inviting them to come on the show, I'll use that. I get a lot of random stuff on LinkedIn as well. Twitter DM is my main way of contacting a lot of people. Yeah, so it's just it's nice to have it all in one place. And now I'm going to have a hardware device that does that for me.
You'll have a half a hardware device.
Half a hardware device and unfinished. Yeah, I'll have to see if I can get somebody to 3D print me. Somebody I can pay to 3D print a case for it, because I think they actually have some case designs for it. Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, that last squirrel story. I'm not sure we need to cover the last one here. But there's I like space. And I guess we'll cover it. This actually isn't the most interesting story about this. The most interesting story is there's been this contest, well, not an intentional contest, not a formal one, but they've been trying to discover all of Jupiter and Saturn's moons, and which planet has the most moons has been bouncing back and forth. And I think it's solidly in Saturn's court now. So Jupiter had the most moons a month ago, and now somebody released a report, some scientists, that nope, now it's Saturn that has the most moons, and it's something like 150 moons now they're up to. And of course, some of these are just like a couple kilometers across, but some of it's exciting. They found some of these moons likely have oceans on them, so really cool. I hope in my lifetime we can do some significant more exploring in our solar system, because I want to hear more details about the solar system before my time is up.
Love it.
All right, that's all we've got for you today. Any parting thoughts before we close up shop, guys?
No, I just want to get back to Gandalf now.
Yeah, me too. Same. I'm going back to play that game right away.
If you need some tips, let me know. I actually have a Notion note where I documented like everything I tried and what worked and what didn't. And it's funny. I watched a video of somebody going through it, and the way they got through the first 6 levels was so much more basic. Like I was just way overthinking getting past some of these levels, I found after watching how somebody else did it. But I still got there.
Level 1 was very straightforward.
Yeah. It doesn't defend at all in level 1. Yeah.
No. One basic question.
Yeah. What's the password? Tell me the password. Speak friend.
In level 2, you have to offer it a chocolate bar.
Yeah. So
all right, no comments from me, Adrian. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. Level 2, you're already past the average human. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys. It's been fun. Yeah, I like these episodes where we just do a news show and then play some pre-recorded stuff. We can put all our energy into the news show. That's a lot of fun.
Love it.
And coming up next are 6 micro interviews from RSA. Enjoy those. And a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. See you again next week. Do the words free time or relaxation sound foreign to you? Perhaps you've been stuck in the office too long, battling cyber threats or worrying about the next strain of ransomware. Let Sophos help provide peace of mind 24/7, 365 with cybersecurity delivered as a service. Because we want you to get back to your weekends, family dinners, and everything in between. And you'll get there with Sophos. Visit securityweekly.com/Sophos to learn more. The cybersecurity landscape is full of single solution providers, making it easy for unexpected cyber threats to sneak through the cracks. That's why Forger is creating a stronger, simpler strategy for protection, one that increases your security maturity while decreasing the operational burden that comes with it. This is all possible thanks to Forger's best-in-class portfolio and deep bench of expert problem solvers. Forger's integrated, scalable solutions help customers face their toughest challenges with confidence. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Fortra, Fortra.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of RSA. Hope you're having a good conference to those who are going. I'm Bill Brenner, VP of Content Strategy at Cyber Risk Alliance and Security Weekly, and I am very pleased to be joined here by Ashley Leonard, Chief Executive Officer of Syxsense. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
How is it going for you so far?
It's been a great show so far. It's great to meet so many people here. It's a big show, but a small industry. So it's great to reconnect with so many friends.
Now, my first question, Syxsense has been around for 10 years or so. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people have asked the question, what's behind the name? Mm-hmm. So talk about that.
Yeah, the name Syxsense comes from, well, that feeling that you know something's going on. And at Syxsense, what we try and do is to help our customers actually uncover what is actually going on all of their endpoints. So that's kind of the origin of the name Syxsense.
Very good. And so you're in the business of unified security for the endpoint. Mm-hmm. So to that end, talk about what you see as the 2-3 biggest challenges these days when it comes to the endpoint.
Yeah, so quite right, Bill. Syxsense is a unified security and endpoint management platform. And so what we've done is to help our customers, first of all, identify all the assets that are connected to the network or are used in the organization as the world's changed with COVID and home working. It's a challenge actually understanding what you have to manage. So we help organizations, again, discover all their IT assets and then bring them under management and be able to provide unified endpoint management capabilities for them, whether it's kind of Windows, Mac, Linux, even mobile devices, iOS, Android, IoT devices. All of that can be done in a single pane of glass. Mm-hmm. But then unify that with security as well. So not only are we able to kind of help our customers ensure that their devices are patched, and as we know, that's often one of the major areas that a breach occurs is through unpatched devices, but we actually can scan those devices looking for security vulnerabilities as well. And being a unified platform, Bill, we're able to leverage the management capabilities with the security capabilities, so not just report on security problems for our customers, but actually use the management engine to go ahead and remediate the security configuration challenges. Mm-hmm. So that might involve shutting off ports or making registry changes versus applying patches, which we also do.
Yeah, so 10 years, the last 3 years have been interesting.
They have.
As you noted, with the pandemic. Talk to me about how in the last 3 years things have changed. So we've heard a lot about, we've seen a lot of companies rushing into the cloud to keep their workforces on track. And now we're on the other side of the pandemic, but now it's settled into more of a hybrid. Talk about what kind of complexities that causes that maybe might not have been on your radar when Syxsense was starting out?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we were built for the cloud, first of all, so that made that transition for our customers very simple. Certainly some of the legacy on-premise platforms had challenges, right? Because you were having to send a lot of data down VPNs, and it was just crushing the network. So when the COVID happened, we were very well positioned to help our customers. Now, obviously today things have changed, and hybrid is the new norm. But what's been interesting, I think, there is that you've got these devices, laptops, whatever, that have been at people's homes, connected to the home network. Children are on those same networks. Who knows where they're going, which websites they're visiting. So these devices are potentially being exposed to security risks while they are at home. And then, on that day or 2 days a week that you're coming back into the office, you pick that device up, you bring it in, plug it straight into the network, and you've got a potential security issue to deal with now inside the corporate firewall. And I think that's where COVID and the hybrid work environment has really impacted the ways that companies need to think about security. Because you can't think about this kind of hard shell that we used to think about, right, where the firewall was protecting the organization, but inside you had this soft center that was exposed. So you've got to think about the security posture of all your devices, but also in relationship to where that device is currently. Maybe you handle that endpoint differently when it's at home versus when it's inside the corporate infrastructure.
So when customers are talking to you, customers and prospective customers, what are the biggest pain points they come to you with? So we know what the risks are out there. We've just talked about the risks that come with mixing personal devices with work devices and having kids working on laptops that are interfacing. But what kind of pain points do you hear about when companies are talking to you about the challenges that they have in keeping their endpoint protection up to where it should be?
Well, that's a great question. There's a lot of them, right? I think that there's a lot of tools out there that help you with endpoint protection. And there's over on the show floor, there's some great vendors. One of the major challenges that we hear from our customers is that they're actually dealing with too many tools. We did actually some research recently and found a direct correlation between the number of tools you have and the number of breaches. And it's not the way you would think. It's the more tools you have, the more breaches you have. And I think the reason for that is that if you have too many tools in your environment, you can't effectively use the tools that you have. So I think finding the right tools to be able to manage your environment is a major challenge for organizations that we help them with. Next stage of that is quite frankly it's the people actually running IT departments. There's so many demands on the IT managers, the CISOs today. And so how do you simplify the security and operations of IT? And then how do you automate it so that you can actually do more with the same number of people that you have today, because the threat's continuing to grow. So those are kind of some of the major challenges that we at Syxsense are really helping our customers with. Patching and security vulnerability management on a kind of more tactical level as well.
So given the seismic shifts of the last 3 years, what do you see as the next 5 years of endpoint security?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, you can't ask
and
that.
Let me work in. Yep. You know where I was going with this. Artificial intelligence, which is certainly not new, but because people now have access to things like ChatGPT, discussion about the benefits and risks have flared anew.
Oh, for sure.
So with that, how do you see that entering the equation and affecting things in the next 5 years?
Well, we've been doing stuff with AI for actually quite a long time already, but ChatGPT is certainly how should I say, democratized AI, right? And on both sides, both from the threat actors as well as from the IT professional side. From our side, the way I look at it is that I think there's a number of different areas where AI is impacting our roadmap, and it's going to help our customers. I think every single vendor has to have an AI strategy because the threat actors do. And if you are not leveraging AI on the defensive side, then your customers are going to be exposed. So we're leveraging it in a number of different ways. We're going to have some announcements coming out very shortly, but things around threat prioritization. If you take a look at, we have a lot of signals coming from our endpoints because of our architecture is pretty unusual in that we have a real-time connection to devices at scale regardless of where they're located. So we're able to pull threat indicators and signals from endpoints and then correlate that data to help prioritize threat remediation. So we're looking at and working on ways that we can actually use AI to really improve how we identify threats within customers' organizations and then help them leverage remediation using our management engine to keep the environment safe and secure.
Great. Now, are you exhibiting?
We are.
All here? So tell everybody where you are.
We are in the connector between the two halls at booth 4339.
In the area that used to be a hallway.
It's the high traffic area. We'll say that.
I actually miss that hallway. That's where it was always kind of dark in there, and you could go and take a little nap.
Well, we do have some comfy chairs, so you can come by and sit down and chat to our team.
Very good. Well, it's been a pleasure meeting up with you, and have much success the rest of this week.
Thanks for your time, Bill. Nice to chat.
Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're recording live from Broadcast Alley here in Moscone West. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and I'm here with Eve Mailer, CTO of ForgeRock. Welcome, Eve.
Thank you very much.
It's wonderful to have you here, and you've already spoken at the conference. Yesterday you were talking about cars.
Yes, we were talking about connected cars. We did more than talk. We actually demonstrated, and we had a little fun with a real model of a car.
That's amazing. Now, one thing I think that surprised me about that, this wasn't a talk about CAN buses. This wasn't specifically security. It was identity. Yeah. So who are we talking about? Like, is this Kit, Michael Knight and Knight Rider kind of identity? What's going on?
Well, 15 years ago, cars were all offline, and a lot of things were offline, and now something like 91% of cars on the road are connected. So, they have SIM cards, and they're they have rolling APIs, and so they can benefit just as much as a lot of other connected services and devices. Really, the whole connected world was our premise that we can improve with identity. We can improve security, we can improve privacy, we can improve experience.
Now, privacy is important. I want to come back to that in a second, but let's start with security. So what does it mean that we have all of these identities with our cars? Are we, is this carjacking? Is this just sharing? How bad can it get?
There's definitely risks. And, there's been some recent breaches that I think people tend to notice. Like there was a famous electric car manufacturer that had sort of an off-by-one error. A guy was able to open a car that wasn't his and drive away with it. And, maybe lesser known was that he could see the data of, the guy whose car it was. And, it's a big mess when you have, call it application by application user management.
Interesting.
And I'll say device by device user management without an overarching kind of view of who the identities are and what the identities are and what the relationships are, because relationships can drive access rules, and that's really important in these huge ecosystems with huge amounts of data.
And access is that's complex. Even just in the standard web application world that I'm familiar with, still not an easily solved problem.
Yeah, it's funny because I think the IoT world can still learn a lot from the web world and the API world in terms of API security. You're exposing endpoints. There's a lot of software-defined features in cars. There's a lot of third-party ecosystems and subscription services that you connect up to a car. And when you don't have a unified view of who is in front of you doing something, you get misses, like you get, your car having to guess who's in the driver's seat some of the time, which it can affect, the position of the seat that you might have saved as a preference. That could be a safety issue if you're futzing with it while you're trying to drive somewhere, So there's physical safety, there's digital security, and there's many more implications.
So bringing on the IoT side of that, notoriously they're slower to update perhaps. They don't necessarily always have the great application security practices in there. Are you seeing the same thing in cars? Are cars, how does that future look?
Yeah, I mean, some of the more famous breaches and more famous, discoveries by white hat hackers have been things like just poor API security practice. I mean, a static API key that was, the default password basically. So I kind of see them as a species of identity theft when that happens. It's just, these things are solvable, actually. We have good practices from the rest of the world to not do that.
Eventually we'll learn, right? But there's also, so let me bring this around to privacy, because the identity, as I said, the identity was like, I hadn't thought of that. It makes sense, of course, as you're describing this, but privacy is also, it needs security, but it's a bit parallel to it. And if we have our identity in our cars, that has some implications. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, so you couldn't have said it better. Is privacy is, it relies on security. And, I sort of think of a pyramid of modern data privacy. Data protection is that base layer that we really need, and that's not accidentally letting the data out. And it turns out, in the case of these connected cars, bristling with sensors, that all that data is considered personal data, at least according to GDPR, because there's a registered owner. So whether it's oil level or whether it's, tire pressure right now, all those things are personal data. So data protection is, the job of a lot of folks, who come to RSA, for example. Then there's a couple of other layers where it diverges from security as a proposition. Data transparency. Are you able to tell your customer what it is you want to know about them, what it is you do know about them? There's certainly regulations around this, and there's increasingly societal forces that are forcing some of the regulations. People are sort of had enough. And then there's, on the tippy top of that, is data control. So you can tell people what you know about them, but if you don't give them a way to do something about it, you lose trustworthiness. So it's more than just a compliance issue. And, a lot of these car manufacturers, as an example, just to continue with connected car, because I've been having so much fun with it recently, they need to give a luxurious experience. And part of that luxurious experience has to be trustworthiness around the data that you're, giving to them in shovelfuls.
Absolutely, yeah. Trust, it's good of you to keep repeating that word, because that's extremely important.
Yeah.
And there's also, because there's also often trust and safety two together.
And in the world of smart things, physical safety really comes into it in ways that you might not have even thought of. If the experience is poor, actually, then it could have been because of a digital security issue, could be a physical safety issue. I mentioned having some system fail. If your transmission goes out, a lot of these things have software-defined features, and in these circumstances, especially, you need to degrade gracefully, and sometimes you need to fail open in a clever fashion, which is not something that,
Security
cybersecurity.
Doesn't like that.
No, it doesn't like that. You have to be subtle about it. You have to be fine-grained about it. Actually, this is where AI can really play a role, right? It can help improve the access controls. It can help improve the authentication, all those signals that you're getting in to detect, who it is. And then you can make better decisions, and you can help that driver or whoever it is, just a retail customer, you can help them make better decisions.
So this also has to be a large ecosystem, right? Because I think our identity isn't just in our car key. It's not just staying on our car, especially as we'll see subscriptions for heated seat warmers. Sorry, we don't have the heated seats today.
Yeah.
But this is, tell us about how does this data come out of the car, and are car manufacturers, looking at this? Is this something new that they're learning as well?
There's the business model aspect of it, which is a whole other conversation, right? There's the aspect, though, of what the architecture is when you have to kind of go chip to cloud. And, the ecosystem includes data from, all kinds of things built into the car, all kinds of third-party systems built into the car, whether it's Apple CarPlay or something else. True story, I was recently on a 10-hour drive, and I discovered that my subscription to navigation data, like traffic data and things that. It was a trial subscription. We just got in the car and it expired. And we're like, boy, we could really use this. The problem that we had was it took 3 failed attempts to sort of log into different systems, end up calling a customer service person, which is expensive for the company and frustrating for us. I was the passenger, I swear. And then the data couldn't be turned on for 24 hours, which was a little too late for us. So they missed an opportunity to make more money. They missed an opportunity to probably gather more data. We can say more about that. And we missed an opportunity to have up-to-date traffic data, which is kind of a safety thing. That's what it's there for.
It is. And there's also a quality aspect to that, too, as you were saying, the experience. But let me come back to that comment you made just now about the data collection. No, so there is, are we seeing transparency? How much control do we see as us as consumers, as the drivers or passengers, of what the cars are collecting?
And passengers are legit, stakeholders in this. We're not seeing the transparency that we'd like. Those societal and regulatory forces are having an effect. I mean, I have a German car, and it appears to try and adhere to GDPR, even though I'm here and so on, because they are, a data controller. And so I'm grateful for that opportunity to say, do not collect. But the number of times the interfaces have to come up to ask you, I mean, the whole kind of opt-in, opt-out equation is, it's imperfect, it's poorly applied oftentimes. And sometimes it's just not even done. I mean, there's a lot of data coming off that you just don't even know was collected, sold. Things like tire pressure as you drive, insurance companies like to know that if you're squealing around corners.
Of course. And that's an area, too, that we haven't even touched on yet is third-party use of this data, insurance companies. So are my rates going up or down depending on how I'm peeling out or doing donuts? I
mean, it's an interesting place to play with incentives, right? And there are positive incentives offered to, be a good driver, safe driver, bonuses and things like that. The danger is just how much we can't pull along everybody who's just in circumstances where they, can't spend all their life worrying about that sort of thing. So these are the responsibilities that connected services and device companies really need to think about in terms of that trustworthiness, the design of the experience. And this is where, identity gives an opportunity to actually improve things because you can at least have a unified view over all of the preferences and consents, for example. So you have a central way to actually manage that. And consents are like little authorization policies. So you have to store them, you have to respect them. And so to do that, it's better to get the kind of global view.
Indeed, and they can also be revoked. They're ephemeral, or they've got that time dimension.
That's right.
As we talk about this, you've been mentioning GDPR, for example, mentioned IoT background. Are there frameworks or are there certain things that you would point to so that car manufacturers, developers in these ecosystems can start looking to improve the security or privacy of this area?
Every time an IoT framework comes out, and there were quite a few of them in the last few years, first thing I would do is search, they were all about security, and I would search for the word privacy. And I think maybe 1 in 10 probably had that word. And they often don't acknowledge the role of identity. When you think about, you're going from smart sensors to gateways up to the cloud, you've got applications on top of that, and then you've got users on top of that. It's a pretty long chain, kind of. And it's hard if you're not all talking together. We were referring in our presentation at RSA about vehicle folks versus identity folks, like not talking. The business folks versus the identity folks. And the question always comes up. Well, where should that function live? And I really see it as it's kind of a shared service that needs to connect to the digital strategy of a company, even if the users that you're serving are not customers, consumers. They may be workforce. Those employees actually deserve a good experience too. And there's all the whole bring your own device, kind of bring your own everything. Yeah. But also those workforce identities are so powerful to attackers for getting access to all the other stuff.
Easiest backdoor into a system.
That's
valid credentials.
That's right. And we've seen some terrible breaches. We talked about connected car ones this week, but they're really everywhere, and you just see them have a huge blast radius when it's workforce kind of to consumer data. It's really bad.
Yes, yeah. Blast radius, that's not what we want to see in physical devices in cars. No.
Yeah, are we metaphorical about this blast?
So you brought a car, had a great presentation yesterday. What can people look forward to in the future from you? You're going to continue with the cars, expanding into other vehicles?
I mean, the principles actually underlie every connected service and device. So we had some fun. We brought a little model of a car. It was fun. It was British Racing Green. We made things happen according to the access controls we were applying because of identity and relationships successfully. But really, it could be washing machines. It could be kind of regular old retail e-commerce. It could be really any connected service can benefit from that approach.
Makes sense there. Everything's collecting our identities, right? Probably good we defend that.
Yes, absolutely.
Eve, this was wonderful. Yeah, we only had about 10 minutes, not 10 hours, but hopefully we navigated this topic quite well.
Next time.
Thank you. Next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Eve. Thanks, everyone else. If you'd like to learn more about ForgeRock, visit securityweekly.com/ForgeRock/RSAC. And stick around. We've got more in this live stream coming up.
Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. It's day 3, still recording live in Broadcast Alley, Moscone West. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me for this segment is Michaël Lakhal. He is the Global Director of Product Management and Strategy at OneSpan. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hopefully I said that right.
Yeah,
okay,
perfect.
Good. Okay,
perfect.
Good. I haven't taken French in a while, so I just want to make sure. We're going to talk digital identity. As I was telling you before we started, I'm an app user data guy, right? I love, to me, application identity and data is where it's at in the security industry. And I'd like to see more innovation in the identity space. What you've done is some interesting things to kind of build a end-to-end holistic digital identity, starting with identity verification, which I think is interesting because right now, I think one of the big challenges is, how do I know who the user actually is? How do I verify that identity is associated to a user? This concept of non-repudiation, right, is a very interesting concept. There's a lot of other use cases. We'll talk about it a little bit, but let's talk about what does identity verification look like? Let's start there and then kind of walk through the solution of how that then influences this kind of end-to-end solution.
So first of all, we need to differentiate, a known user versus non-user, because it's identity. The identity is a global generic term which embed identity verification, like for pure prospect, but also authentication, which is different, as you know, for banks or any type of organization. So by saying that, identity is everywhere. As you said, it became crucial right now before starting any process, you need to formally identify someone. That's so important to execute any type of transaction. And this is what we are doing at OneSpan. Now, when it comes to identity, you have different ways to do it. You have multiple. Everyone here is talking about AI, for instance, this week. But also you have document verification, facial recognition, this kind of classic identification solution. Mm-hmm. What we see right now is also a new solution popping up, like a digital wallet, digital identity wallet. We know that in Europe, for instance, with EIDAS 2.0, this is an initiative, the regulation is here. It's going to come in force next year. And we know that big players like Apple and Google are investing massively on this digital wallet. So that's going to be also part of the scope of the identity, and maybe it's going to facilitate the identification of end user.
So are you primarily using a document approach for identity verification today?
Right now, yes. Because we are a global company and we need you. And the challenge with this document is to have a global coverage. You need to be able, when it comes to passport, it's pretty easy. It's a document done to travel, to be recognized by any country, any entity. When it comes to document like driving license, IDs, it's more complicated.
Right.
Because it's different. Even in the United States here, you have different driving license format from a state to another one.
Right.
So, scanning, recognizing, make sure that the document is authentic, it's an authentic one. It's really, the challenge. And if you try to expand that globally, it's way more challenging.
Right, yeah. But if you do it right, now we know who the user is tied to the identity.
Exactly.
Now, once I have that allows you to do some very interesting things, right, from an authentication transaction perspective. So that's where the rest of the platform comes in, right?
Exactly, because when you've done that, you create a digital identity in your system, so you can recognize someone, and then after you can give him any type of authentication solution. It could be a mobile software authentication, could be a hardware authentication as well. We can, it depends on the level of security you expect for the type of transaction you want to perform. But I mean, we have different solutions. It could be based on fingerprint, facial recognition, any type of authentication solution. And this is right now, I mean, where most of the high regulated organization in high regulated industry are using to identify or authenticate someone.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so now you're authenticated. What do I do with that authenticated identity now? Like, are you using it for financial transactions? Are you using it for secure communications, email? Like, what are all the different use cases for this kind of technology?
You need to authenticate for anything. If you want to access to your bank account balance, for instance, so you need an authentication. But then after, when you authenticate, or it could be like in B2E, business to employee domain, the workforce, you need to authenticate, and then you have authorization to access to this or that services. So this is the concept of CIM, IAM in general.
Right.
For in the B2C world is different. I mean, you can have like a strong authentication which allows you, to have a money transfer. So then after you can start a process of transaction signing. I'm not talking about agreement here. It's just a transaction signing a set of data to allow you to prove that you send me money, for instance, or I send you money.
Right.
And it has to be recorded, and you need to have an audit trail associated to that to prove it.
Got it. So does this solve the one identity challenge? Right. So if I think about it, I have multiple identities, right? I have multiple email accounts, I have multiple LinkedIn accounts, my Twitter account, this account, that account, right? Does this solve the mass of having multiple identities, however you do, into a single digital identity? So are you kind of federating across all these different areas? Because, to contact me, it depends on what mechanism. But if I had one single place, like, does all that come together then in this digital identity?
So first of all, we need to define, the level of assurance you expect from your identity. Like if you're using your Facebook account, like it's a social media account, it's not like a strong identification because it's based. But if you're using like the authentication or identification done by your bank through a KYC process, which is very defined, standardized, that's a different level. So first, we really need to differentiate the level of assurance expected for the type of transaction you want to perform.
Yeah, but let's think about this for an online identity for a second, right? I go into eBay and I want to pay with PayPal on my credit card. By using the digital identity that has been verified, it also reduces fraud, wouldn't it?
Yes, because when you subscribe to an eBay account, you go through a KYC process, exactly what you did with your bank. So a sort of KYC process, because the first thing, you need to fill in your credit card number. It means that you are owner of a bank account, and by definition, you went through a KYC. So we rely on the KYC done by your bank to strongly and having high level of identification to open a eBay bank account. So you see, again, it depends on the level of assurance expected.
Yeah, but a standard credit card transaction, though, credit card fraud has been rampant for a long, long time, right? You don't go through that whole process for any normal transaction, but if you could tie that transaction with a verified digital identity, that would also reduce fraud for those basic transfer, right? So that's like the nirvana state, like one digital identity that can span all these different systems, right? So even though it might say it requires my Gmail account here and my business account there, if I can use one identity that verifies that I am who I am across the board, there's a lot of really interesting use cases you can solve for. Fraud is one, phishing is another one from an email send perspective. I'm sure there's others out there that you've thought about. Like that's the potential opportunity.
Yeah, and what you're describing is exactly, the concept of the digital wallet. The digital wallet, as you know right now, we have a wallet. We all use Apple Pay, Google Pay, or whatever, the solution for payment. So if you combine it, to your point, with a digital wallet, having a stronger identity, and combine it with the payment system, you have this guarantee you expect. And you can prevent fraud, you can prevent phishing attacks, and so on. And the idea is really, having all this PII information, personal information, into one single secure storage system that you can share and pick up on the sole control of the end user. It doesn't, because a wallet, if you think about it, you can share your identity, you can share just your date of birth, You can share your address. You can also share your medical information with your doctor.
Right.
So, I mean, you don't want to share all this data with everyone.
Right.
So it has to be on your control and make sure that you're sharing this data with that organization.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. I mean, if we can combine both, you have a high secure solution.
Yeah. It also allows you to deal with some of the privacy issues. Now, in the States, it's different than over in Europe, obviously, with GDPR and the different requirements. This would also solve some of those privacy concerns and issues as well, right?
100%. I mean, the regulation is something. I mean, the reality of this privacy is something else. It depends from, as you said, I mean, from a region to another. I mean, the approach is different, but the problem still exists.
Right.
It's a global problem. It's really a global problem. And the best way to solve it is, as you said, I mean, having one single digital identity that could be used and on the sole control of the end user.
Got it. So where are the primary use cases? Consumer, SIAM, I think is the term in the industry. I mean, is consumer like the primary use case for where you're seeing this opportunity, or are you seeing it on the workforce kind of business side as well?
I would say both, but consumer, this is the mass market. This is where the market is, and this is most of the fraud are right now. Definitely with workforce, I mean, but there is a lot of existing solution. I mean, most of the company are already equipped, but the consumer is really exposed right now to this phishing alert.
Well, because they don't have all these additional capabilities that you do in a corporate environment.
Exactly.
Right? In the corporate environment, we were talking about this also a little earlier, you've got your identity and access management provider, your multi-factor authentication provider, your SSO provider, maybe a privileged access provider. The consumer doesn't have all that. They have a Gmail account or a whatever account, like that's their identity online, and so they don't have all the other protections that a corporation would have.
Yeah, and you're right. The thing is, if you think about it, I'm working for OneSpan. Creating a OneSpan email address for you, it's quite impossible. If I want to create a Gmail address on your behalf, it's very easy.
It's very easy.
So that's why, to your point, I mean, it's exactly the difference between the B2B transaction and the B2C. The B2C is definitely more at risk.
Got it. Okay. Now, how do you? So when we think about, so we go through the process. You start using this identity. You authenticate with your token. Is there any other thing you need to do? Like, is that it? Like, well, how do you deal with things like potential risk or fraud, re-authentication, additional factors for authentication? Like, how does that all come together in the OneSpan solution?
So OneSpan, what we focus on is really, I mean, something where we need to balance the risk and the user experience. That's crucial. I mean, it doesn't make sense to highly secure something what it's not needed.
Right.
And most of the security need to be transparent for the end user. That's super important. That's crucial. I mean, you can have risk analysis, you can collect data during a transaction, and then after you can add a layer of security if needed, if you detect a suspicious activity.
Right, okay.
It could be a suspicious activity due to the device because we don't recognize it's your device. It's not the device you use to transact every day, or it could be, I mean, some things other suspicious like your geolocation, or we detect that the app is corrupted, or any kind of information we can detect, and then after we can add another layer of security if needed. That's what we call, I'm not a big fan of this term, the continuous authentication, but it has to be fully transparent for the end user.
Right, okay. Yeah, because you don't want to create friction, especially for the consumer. It's hard enough in the workforce to do it, let alone for a consumer, right? Because you don't want to slow down transactions. You want them to be to buy things online as easy as possible, but you also, if you're trying to eliminate fraud or protect bank accounts, et cetera, you want to put some level of security. So you're right, there's always this kind of balance between ease of use and security controls.
You know, because what's matter for our clients right now is the passing rate. I mean, you need, when you perform an authentication, identification, any transaction, it has to be completed. So if you subscribe to any kind of product, I mean, the passing rate need to be close to 100%. It's impossible to reach out to 100%, but you need to try to really to reach out as maximum as possible to 100%. That's, I mean, business-driven decision. But on the same time, it has to be secure. So this is the balance, and this is where we need to be we need to bring some intelligence into the identification and the authentication.
Yep.
So this is what we call intelligent adaptative authentication. or risk-based authentication, depends, but this is the kind of solution we can provide today.
Got it. Okay. So I love the use cases. I love the concept. Like, I wish you the best of luck, because if you can solve the identity problem, the world will be a much safer place.
Thank you. We try. We work very hard to do it. So.
All right. Thanks, Michaël.
Thank you very much.
And if you want to learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/OneSpan RSAC. Stay tuned. We have more interviews coming up.
Attackers are only getting more proficient, so how can you proactively adapt your cybersecurity strategy? Core Security by Fortra helps you uncover and prioritize the risks that pose the biggest threat to your organization. Core Impact is a penetration testing tool that safely finds and exploits vulnerabilities using the same techniques as attackers. You can conduct advanced pen tests with ease using certified exploits and automations. Take your engagements even further by pairing with our additional red teaming tools from Cobalt Strike and Outflank. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Fortra Core Security.
Created in 2005 and hosted by security industry veterans, Paul Security Weekly is your source for in-depth coverage of the latest vulnerabilities, exploits, and security research. Our weekly security news discussion dives deep into the security issues we face today and potential solutions in a fun and lively atmosphere. Each week we bring on guests from the security community to learn about their journey and discuss topics relevant to their work and research. You can also subscribe to our show by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Paul Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher. We've recorded a ton of content over the years, so we created Spotify playlists featuring some of our favorite episodes, including interviews with Marcus Random, John McAfee, and Chris Roberts, to name a few. You can find them at securityweekly.com/starter packs.
Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're here recording live from Broadcast Alley in Moscone West. This interview was sponsored by VMware Carbon Black. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me for this interview is Jason Rolleston, VP and GM of VMware Carbon Black.
Yep.
And welcome, Jason. Good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks to have you. Great to be here. It's been an exciting week.
And good conversation here. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. But let's start off with what CISOs are focused on.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like what's new and different, and I think there's almost what's old is new again. I feel like the cloud has definitely come up and is picking up more cloud security, container security, modern apps. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it, I think, is basics. It's continuing to be focused on detection, response. A lot about how to get the most out of your teams and most out of your investment. So it's in many ways, staying focused. I think we tend to gravitate to the new and the shiny, but a lot of what the CISOs are the same stuff. Manage risk, get stuff done.
Yeah, we call them basics, but they're not easy.
No,
that's the thing. That's the problem.
No, not at all. Right.
Yeah. So what are some of these things that you're hearing from CISOs that they're really focused on, these problems, especially with the market currently? Yeah. A lot of companies have had layoffs.
Yeah.
So clearly they're dealing with talent acquisition and retention, things like that. What other things?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's budget pressure that I'm hearing out of people I haven't heard in a while. It's not necessarily now. Sometimes it's future. They're expecting pressure. Certainly continue to manage the team and talent. Talent's always a challenge in this stuff. And then I think how you help that talent do the most. I mean, it starts to get across to the experience and the tools they're given.
Make sure they're effective and efficient.
Yeah. How can you get as much out of them and make sure their time's not being wasted on kind of routine things, and free yourself up to take on some of the new risks, the new challenges. People are facing much more advanced attacks. I mean, I think one of the things we've seen with the rise of ransomware not just being an event at the end when you encrypt, it's really the last thing they do. It's the whole attack up to then, the double extortion. Yeah. People who haven't faced advanced attacks are now having to deal with advanced attacks, and that's putting some new requirements into their space. So.
Well, and again, talking about basics, a lot of people can't detect the basic things. No. When I look at a ransomware, how ransomware goes down, it looks like a pretty typical pen test that we've been having for 20 years. Yeah. Up until that the ransomware payload step.
Yep.
Which is very modular and can change, so it's hard to prepare for that. But really, those 17 steps before the ransomware, why aren't we detecting that?
Look, I think a lot of organizations just didn't have to worry about this kind of threat. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of it was the security through obscurity. There was no reason to go at some of these smaller shops or these different places. So they could get away with basics, the AV, some of these things, and say, look, I'm good enough. I'm not worried about virus. I'll go okay. But I think the economic incentive, right, the economic driver for ransomware now bringing these more sophisticated attacks down to everybody is kind of, you've got to do more. People got to look inside, and then you get the zero trust mentality. People are generally inside somewhere. Mm-hmm. How do you find them? How do you identify them? That's a big part of what we have been focusing on with our efforts, really this idea of how you identify lateral movement and find those folks who are already inside.
Yeah, and it used to be, the excuse used to be, we don't have PII, we don't have payment data, like we don't have anything attackers would want. And even back in the day, we would see cases where people would come in, BEC-style scams, 10, 15 years ago. We'd ask people, do you have money in the bank?
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what they're after.
Yeah.
And they prefer that to having to buy iPhones with stolen credit card and have to launder and fence that.
Way simpler.
And tumble all that, that data.
No, way simpler. Cleaner way to get the money out for sure.
Yeah. So obviously, CISO's one of the primary roles is to reduce risk.
Yep.
But they need these staffs. Detection and response is still very human dependent. I think. I'm sure you've had 1,000 conversations about ChatGPT and how it can, maybe increase some of the automation here, increase that efficiency and that efficacy per head count maybe, and maybe we'll see that in the near years. But for now, still have to attract and acquire talent.
Yeah, I think you do. I think you also have to find ways to make the tools, the technology approachable to that talent. And you find ways to have more and more of the work that's manual, that's heavy lift, done by tech, right? So what can we do to see more, stop more attacks, provide the information to you in ways that you can consume, and really help that process along, right? Because you're only going to have so many people in the end. So again, how do you get the most out of them?
And we still have a gap between the time that the attackers need to get what they want and to get to their goal, versus us detecting them and having an opportunity to contain, eradicate, get them out of the environment. So that's what is that gap like nowadays? Is it still measured in days?
It depends who you ask. There are organizations who will tell you they got it in minutes and this, that, and the other. But I think, look, it's some things you're getting quick. I always think of these threats across the spectrum. There's a certain set of things you detect in seconds. There are things you detect in minutes and hours, and there are things that you detect in days and weeks and months. Yeah. Averages are, and I think probably in the days is probably what you would see across the company.
And you have to have some response. Like detecting is only half the battle. Yeah. Without, if your response capability is entirely manual, that's maybe not going to help you.
Look, I think finding stuff fast is a matter. It's part of why all the hubbub around XDR and this and that of how we get better at detecting, identify it. I think R gets overlooked in some cases. It's a big part of it. Is how do I actually go through and investigate more rapidly, and then what can I do about it to start hiving off and protecting myself and remediating. The whole picture matters. It's a big thing we've been able to do. I think some really strong at Carbon Black for a long time is provide that whole mix. And a big part of what VMware kind of brings to the table is all these remediation options and working with the network, taking a lot of different steps to kind of secure the environment when you're finding yourself in trouble.
And speaking of XDR, I hear you have a new product.
We do. In some ways, people are like, you're late in space. I think if you're an EDR player, you have to be there. We really wanted to do something thoughtful and kind of do it right. We do. So we XDR, I think, as you well know, really loosely defined space.
Yes,
Not well understood.
And we need to cover that because people are going to be like, what do you mean? What do you mean when you say XDR?
And it's funny, is I find myself as a real believer in XDR, but a lot of times with customers, I actually say it and then run away from it. And I say that because there's so much uncertainty and confusion, right? So for me, I really think XDR is powerful because EDR was so powerful. Right. It really transformed the way we do a lot of things in the SOC, a lot of things in threat response and incident response.
I would even say it had the potential to be powerful. But we had to enable that potential somehow, and that's kind of how I saw the road to XDR, right? Is unlocking that full potential.
Well, I think it's taking. EDR did so much. You needed people to do it, but I think it said the approach, security specific telemetry, deep data, important for you don't always catch things, have the forensics, do the investigation, and then you start processing that data. Say, look, if I get analytics and detection against this, I can find things earlier, and it's not just executables, it's evidence of hacking activity. XDR to me says, why aren't we doing that for more stuff? Right? Why we should be doing that for the network. We should be doing that for identity and email and cloud. So it's
extending kind of, beyond EDR.
It's the same kind of construct of just deep security specific telemetry. I worked a lot in SIM in the past, and SIM, the problem we had was it's a data scavenger. Right? You think of SIM as an analytics tool. It's a data scavenger. The data you collect is thrown off by somebody else. It wasn't built for security. It wasn't built to detect threats. It wasn't really built for anything. It just happens to be logs that are flowing. EDR, we built it. We could actually go in and get the telemetry. We continue to extend what we do. We just added kind of the ability to get authentication events kind of coming off of an endpoint, which gives us kind of visibility on the identity side. And then for us, XDR is kind of bridging network and endpoint. So our entry into this was we took some of the network technology that came from actually an acquisition of Lastline in 2020.
Okay.
So Lastline
I forgot about that.
NTA, NDR. They bought that to kind of integrate into NSX and the vSphere environments. We've taken some of that tech and we've actually embedded it into the Carbon Black endpoint.
Okay.
And what that means is we now have an endpoint plus network kind of XDR. It's focused. We're trying to be pretty tight at what we do.
So the network piece is on the host?
Yeah, it's on the endpoint. So this means we have visibility to all network connectivity throughout the environment, no matter where you are. And it's not coming from the network, it's coming from the host. So if you got your laptop in a coffee shop out here, we got you, right? You're seeing all of the east-west traffic. And this is interesting. This is back to that lateral movement and finding people inside. Most people that are doing network monitoring, it's all north-south. They're looking at egress, they're looking what's coming in and out of my environment. They're not looking inside. They just don't have it. You could, but it's just impractical. It's been hard. Taps, devices, management's been really difficult. So we now have complete visibility of east-west traffic. That data is natively married with the endpoint data. What I mean by that, in a traditional sense, if I'd caught an alert going in and out, I have to connect that. I have to say this IP address, okay, what is that? Is there NAT between it? Is there DHCP tables? Okay, maybe I've gotten to the right device. Now do I have EDR records?
All the context.
To get through that, back to your point around time, takes a lot of time and a lot of work to connect those things, right? And so for us, since every connection is observed on the agent, we see it, we know what process was tied to it, we see all the rest of the activity, we know who it was, who started the process.
Yeah, process tied to it. Like that little bit there is so important.
Oh, and it's just there. Yeah. It's not that you can't get it, but it takes a lot of effort to get back there and some guesswork. So for us, none of that. And it's super easy to turn on. Right? So for us, if you have EDR, you want XDR, it is a feature flag in our console. There's no network configs, there's nothing, and boom, telemetry's coming in, you're seeing it, you're able to combine with all of the deep telemetry we collect on the endpoint. Use all the tools and things you're familiar with. It's just a tremendously strong offer that's making XDR approachable in our mind. I think XDR has been very hard for people because a lot of people come in and say, hey, you got to throw out everything you have. Buy all my stuff. Buy this bunch of things. Change everything you're doing. And we're saying, look, no, you're good. Keep using your SIM. If you're using Carbon Black, you're already there. Great. This is a way to extend and get more value, more detection, telemetry, more information. It adds to what you're already doing. And,
the X and XDR.
It just adds it. And
and the thing that gets me most excited that you said there is I remember being engaged in the very early days, when FireEye kind of introduced this sector, and we had Last Line and a few other companies come in, and the way that they sold it was so counterintuitive to how you needed the technology. So when I was on the enterprise and we brought in FireEye, one of the things we immediately noticed is, okay, this thing is priced as an appliance. At a point to where we can only afford to buy one and put it in our headquarters. But that's where I have the least issues and investigations and incidents. Like all my incidents are at these, stores and retail points where I've got 3 people. I can't afford to put a $250,000 box in a.
And you can't let taps and like network. I mean, if you're not doing hairpinning now, things are going straight up to the network. You're missing it. So this combination of seeing everything and back to the lateral movement. If people are in, they're moving around. You have to have visibility of what's going on. You've got to tie that, have the context of what's happening in the endpoint. We think we have something that's just really unique in market.
Even a $1,200 Palo Alto UTM was too expensive to put in in 1,000 locations.
You got to ship it, you got to manage it, you got to keep it up, you got to upgrade it. I mean, I think that's the practicality wise. The network tap-based approach to this is just unmanageable. It doesn't work. You can't go down it. Technically possible, but nobody does it. We've kind of taken that massively distributed approach. You can do it because at each endpoint it's not massive amount of traffic, and it's just really unique insight. People are super excited. Our partners are kind of over the moon with this. Customers, people are fired up, and we're excited to see it out there.
So is this something that existing customers, if I've already got Carbon Black agents deployed, and it would be the what's the name of it's the detect agent?
It's Carbon Black Cloud is the overall thing.
It's converged now. Yeah. But is this something where I can just I can switch on the licensing and the code is already there. I just need to switch it on.
As long as you're up on the kind of the most recent version of the kind of cloud agent, you've done the upgrades, which most people are keeping up on pretty quick. It is just a featured flag, tick on, and you're good and go. And people, it's hot.
Very nice, very low friction. Carbon Black has always been good about that. Like I remember in the days when they started giving out licenses for free for incident responders, just to get Carbon Black out there.
Yeah, we still do it. We still do it, and it's the depth of what we're doing. It's just so much in character of who we are. Taking that deepness, completeness of telemetry, and then just extending it out. We're just doing more of it, and it's almost kind of getting back to our roots in some ways.
Winning through product strategy.
Hey,
I like it. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep it simple.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, Jason. To find out more about VMware Carbon Black, please visit securityweekly.com/VMware Carbon Black RSAC. And if you can't stick around for the rest of the live stream, or you're catching this afterwards, you can check out securityweekly.com/RSAC to find all of the RSA conference coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance. Thank you again.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. It's day 3. We're still in Broadcast Alley recording live streaming as well. I'm your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me for this segment is Mickey Bresman. He is the CEO at Semperis. Welcome, Mickey.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we're going to talk Active Directory security and I think resilience. I want to talk the security side first. So as we were preparing for this, I was going back through my notes going, wait. We've had Active Directory security solutions in the market and some successful exits by Active Directory security vendors in the market. And the first question I kind of have is like, if we've had 3 successful exits, like, have we not solved the Active Directory security problem yet?
It's a great question. And I think in reality-wise, we actually had much more than 3. We had, from the top of my head, I can mention at least 5.
Okay. I knew of 3 because I think all 3 of them were sponsors at one time on our program. So that's why I went back. I found 3.
That makes sense. Yeah. No, but yeah, there was at least 5 easily.
Okay.
But so something to think about. AD has been around since roughly 2000, maybe 99 is how many people look at it, which makes it today 23 years old type of a technology, which means that it have a lot of different vulnerabilities that were created by different administrators that were managing it and using it and so on. The startups that you've mentioned that had the exits, or the companies should probably say, were all solving different type of problems. And the reality is that there are still a lot of different problems with AD. What we've seen if you go by whoever you prefer to quote, if it's Microsoft Security Research, if it's the Verizon one, everybody basically quoting 9 out of 10 attacks will have AD, because it's such an interesting target. Now also, another thing to keep in mind, AD is in use by 90% of the companies out there. So now, forget the market size for me, as an attacker, I know you have one. If I want to go and breach your Salesforce as an example, I will not try to breach your Salesforce. I will go after your AD. There is plenty of solutions, probably should not call those solutions, but plenty of tools out there that can allow you to abuse AD that were created over all of those years.
Yep.
So you can buy tools to abuse AD for relatively non-expensive pricing, as funny as it might sound, or not funny. And since I know that once I get inside of AD, I own everything, you have a lot of people that putting a lot of effort to create those tools that allows you to abuse AD. And I think that's part of the reason why we keep on seeing new and new types of attacks coming up all the time. And it's part of the reason why the problem has not been solved.
So why hasn't Microsoft fixed this? You've got Azure AD, you've got all Microsoft making lots of investments in innovation on the security side, but yet they haven't tackled the security aspects of Active Directory. Don't they have an opportunity to do it? Like, why haven't they done it?
First, I'm going to start by saying that I love Microsoft, and we all use them, right?
Yeah, we all do.
But I think, if you think about what the size of the problem actually is, and what is it that any one company can do, one of the things that I always say in security in general, no one company will solve everything, at least not in the feasible future. I know that some inspire to that, but and generally speaking, Microsoft's approach was always that they like the ecosystem. So they want to make sure that there are partners that are working with them, and we're one of those, and creating solutions around the products that they provide into the market. With that said, I think Microsoft did a lot on the security side, more so in Azure AD now than in AD.
Yeah.
Kind of made the push of, we want to make sure that once you get into the cloud, which is typically more vulnerable because it's more exposed, we want to make sure that you feel very safe there. So to some degree, I would say that AD on-prem is now more of a focus of third-party providers like ourselves.
Okay. So Azure AD does have some more of the security protections in it versus the old legacy on-prem Active Directory, right?
Correct.
Okay. So are you protecting, we'll get into the what you're doing actually in a second, but so are you just primarily focused then on the on-prem Active Directory environments, or does your solution also kind of overlap into Azure AD?
So we actually do both. We do AD on-prem and Azure AD. And I think maybe what is more interesting is the hybrid scenarios now that we're seeing. Because both directions, by the way, so both I've breached something in like your AD on-prem environment, I have an account, that account is being synchronized into your Azure AD, because let's be real, most companies out there are hybrid and they're all synchronized accounts. Some synchronize secrets as well, password mostly. So once I've been synchronized into your Azure AD environment, potentially now I also become a global admin account or something like that. I get privileges and boom, I'm going into your Salesforce. And we also see some of the attacks that go the other way around. I've breached Azure AD, from there I go back to your on-prem environment and I own both environments.
Right, okay.
So it's also interesting to watch kind of the evolution of what is happening in the, I'm going to call it the market, but you had for years attackers focusing on AD because that was like the #1 target. If you think about the amount of time that Azure AD has been around, it's roughly, if we were now in 2012 from AD on-prem perspective, why I'm bringing it up, 2012, we had attacks against AD, but it wasn't a lot of those as what we see now.
Okay.
My point is that this is to some degree also the tipping point. So, and things now move much, much, much faster than what they used to be 10 years ago.
Right.
So what we are starting to see is attacks going specifically after Azure AD, because all of a sudden it's a much more interesting target. Because if I get there, I get into your cloud applications, which are also much more interesting target as time goes by. And
because you're putting more and more sensitive data and your crown jewels in the cloud, so go there first, tap into those. Oh, by the way, I can get synchronized on-prem. I can go after all your on-prem assets later too, if I wanted to, right?
Correct. So we still see much more attacks going against AD on-prem. But with that said, we're starting to see an uptick in attacks going against Azure AD. And by the way, others as well. I mean, Okta has been breached, as you probably know.
Yeah.
Anything that can be interesting will be a target.
Yeah, I mean, credentials, getting to act, I mean, that's the first step, right? You get credentials, get those credentials in the environment, escalate privileges, and then move pretty much wherever you want. Like, it's the common case, right?
That's why they call those the keys to the kingdom, right?
Yeah.
You get those, you can do, by the way, two different aspects. One, potentially as an attacker, I'm going after because I want to steal your data. So I want the permissions to go and enter whatever system and take whatever I want. The second one is the ransomware or the wiper situation. Wiper basically means I don't want your money. I just want to destroy you.
Yeah, I want to destroy you. Yeah.
And if I take down your permission provider, you can't do anything because you can't log into anything. No data, nothing can authenticate you. So you're basically completely locked out. And unfortunately, in ransomware attacks, if you remember the Merkel story as an example, 9 days just to recover their AD. Now keep in mind that while AD is down, you cannot recover anything else because everything depends on AD.
Right.
So if I can get inside of your AD or Azure AD for the sake of discussion, I own your environment.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So you said each of these companies, these 5 different initial startups, are all kind of solving a different security problem.
Yep.
How are you solving the Active Directory security problem? Like, what's unique about your approach that maybe the other 5 haven't done?
Sure. So I think, first of all, the way that we approach it, we refer to that as the cyber resiliency challenge.
Okay.
And when I'm thinking about cyber resiliency, to me, it basically means I want to cover the entire attack kill chain. I want to think about what do I do to prevent it, so the pre-attack stage.
Yep.
I want to think how fast can I detect it and then contain it. So this is the during the attack stage. But also I'm being realistic and I know that at some point things will fail. There potentially be a human mistake. There is multiple different reasons why. So I want to be able to help with a customer, even in a situation where they've been maybe encrypted end-to-end, kind of the late stage of the attack. Or the other scenario that we see quite often is that I, as an attacker, now own the environment, as we spoke about it before. What do you do then?
Right.
And we are the most complete solution in the market today, where we basically provide the pre, the during, and the post, everything under the same platform, everything plays nicely together. On the resiliency, and that's to me what's the resiliency side is. On the resiliency side, the last stage when it comes to you've been breached, and I'll give you maybe a story to give you some understanding of what it means. We get a call from a customer that was not a customer of ours before the incident. They had their AD environment breached. In their case, the firewalls were authenticated against AD as well. They come into the office one morning and they find out everything is completely open, no rules on the firewall. Traffic, as you can imagine, in and out. The attacker can do whatever they want.
Yep.
They go in, they change all of the passwords, close all the firewalls and so on. Gain control of the environment. Next morning, the exact same thing happens again. Everything is open, so they understand, okay, we don't control this environment at all. There is something in our AD that owns this environment.
Yep.
So in most cases, unless you have a resiliency program in place, you're lost.
So basically what you're saying is I needed a known good state that I could roll back to.
So this is where the challenge actually becomes. You're right, but the challenge of trying to figure out what is a good known state is almost impossible to solve. The reason being, most likely you've been breached months ago. The attacker was inside of your environment for God knows how long. You cannot really go back months ago because the amount of data that you will lose because of it is something that you will not survive as an organization. So we took a completely different approach. We said, let's decouple AD from Windows, the operating system on which it is running, so that any malware that have been deployed, any rootkits and so on, once we back up the environment, if we recover to a clean OS, we are not bringing none of that with us. Just no executables at all, making sure that that's not traveling with us.
Oh, interesting.
Then we said another challenge that we've seen with ransomware attacks, maybe the environment does not exist anymore at all. So maybe I was running even a hardware type of machines. By the way, it's highly recommended by Microsoft. So maybe I had HP, Dell, any one of those machines running my DCs. Everything has been encrypted, firmware type of an attack. I lost the environment completely. I need to move to Azure or something like that, or AWS or GCP, any one of the cloud providers. The challenge in the past was that you had infrastructure dependency. So you could not take a backup from here to there.
Right.
We eliminated it completely. We're agnostic to the infrastructure. You took a backup of whatever that machine was. You created it wherever you want. We change IP addresses on the fly. So generally speaking, we basically solved the challenge of what happens in those scenarios where we lost control completely. Literally 3 clicks, you are done. They're saying, I used to be here. That's no longer relevant. I'm going there. I used to have 50 DCs. I only have 5 now. Do your thing. The machine, the system basically does the whole thing. Now what we also found out is most customers actually want the human interaction as well, because you want somebody that's been there, done that, and seen. So we have an incident response team that is focused specifically on the identity side of things, and we're seeing on average 1 or 2 incidents a month. Now keep in mind, incident for me is not you have a mailbox.
It's not full-blown ransomware per se.
No, it actually is. For me, an incident is not. Company will not be calling me because they have a mailbox that have been breached, or they call me because it's DM.
Okay.
Like either they fully lost control of the environment or it's been encrypted. So because we're seeing those type of situations on a monthly basis, when we come in, we have playbooks, we know exactly what to do. First thing, don't panic. There is ways to deal with it. It's not the end of the world. And we basically start to work with the customer from that point, getting back the control of the environment, recovering if needed, forensic that comes after that, making sure the attacker is really, really out.
Got it. And then you're putting the resilience component in place so that it doesn't happen again.
Correct. So then we try to do as much as we can on the prevention, because if we can, let's make sure that we don't even get there.
So what are the types of prevention controls that you can actually put in place with Active Directory?
Multiples. So we have, on the pre-attack stage, I would say, indicators of exposure, indicators of compromise. Those are the things that you would mostly be focusing on. We have about 150 of those between AD and Azure AD, and also some that go specifically for the hybrid scenarios. Everything that we find will be mapped to the MITRE or attack or defend frameworks. We also provide the ANSI framework, just because we have different type of requirements from customers. And then we also allow you to understand how bad it is what we find. The idea there is that once we found something that it can be potentially lead to a breach in your environment, close the gap as fast as you can before the attacker actually does it. So if you remember the summer of 2021, there were about 3 0 days coming out of Microsoft, one after the other. Petit Pitam was the one that mostly discussed, but there were actually 2 other ones that were as bad. What we did on our security research team, we released indicators every 3 days. So once there was a discovery of what it is, how it's operates, 3 days after you as a customer got an indicator, you knew where you have the vulnerabilities, you went ahead and you closed the gaps. So that would be one thing that you can do to prevent. Just scan your environment and make sure that you close the gaps before somebody finds them.
Right.
The second thing, you can actually harden your environment to some degree. You can set up policies in place. Many companies will deploy a PAM, like Delaney, CyberArk. There is multiple of those. But you need to make sure that you actually enforce the usage of those. Because what happens with many of the PAM solutions is that if now somebody does something that has nothing to do with the PAM, but it is a privileged account in the AD environment, the PAM will not know about it. Or will know about it 10 hours later, which is way too late.
Yeah, way too late.
So if you use a solution that can let you know what changes are taking place, who is making those, what values are they changing, what objects are they touching, and then also prevent it if it's not supposed to be happening. A change happened, it's not aligned with our policy, undo it immediately, don't keep it there. That's some of the things you can do to prevent things.
Awesome. Mickey, this has been enlightening. I didn't know we still had a big Active Directory security problem. Thank you for joining us.
It was great. Thank you.
If you want to learn more about how to protect your Active Directory environment, please visit securityweekly.com/Semperis RSAC. Semperis RSAC.
Good afternoon, everybody, from day, what is this, 3? Day 3.
I think 3.
Day 3 of RSA 2023. I am pleased to be joined by Dave Merkel, CEO and co-founder of Expel, which is also the sponsor of this segment. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I like the Merkel, which is the proper pronunciation, as opposed to Merkel. So that's nice. Well done. I like that.
Yeah, I figure you get that a lot.
That's I think the best thing I got was going through an airport in Frankfurt, and the guard was like, "How are things in Berlin?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Your last name," which was hilarious. Yeah,
very slyly, your last name.
Like subtle German humor. Yeah.
So shifting subjects to the matter at hand.
Okay.
The matter at hand for us right now is vulnerability and threat landscape and how it is changing in the world for your customers. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, nice small topic. I'll take that in just two parts. If I think about sort of threat landscape, I hate that phrase, but it's in use, so let's go with it.
Like thought leadership.
Yeah, when we look at exactly.
I don't like it, but I haven't thought of anything better.
This thought is out front. When I think about evolving threats, I mean it evolves with the technology, right? So as defenders become more adept, attackers become faster. That is exacerbated as there's new attack surfaces. Think about cloud, think past cloud and sort of the nuances inside cloud environments like Kubernetes. And so there's that continual adaptation. That's a forever thing. That's not new, but that's a continued evolution. As I think about something like vulnerability management, that's been historically thought about as in the context of, well, we do some scans and we got some vulnerabilities, and it will take 6 months, and maybe somebody will patch some stuff, and who knows. I think as we look to the future, you really have to think about operationalizing that. There's a set of that information that you really need to act on in the same time frame as you would an alert if you want to actually minimize risk. If you go back to what I originally said about threats, which is as we evolve, they get faster. And so as time matters, your cycle time is material as to whether or not your controls, your mitigations actually have an effect. And so I think the need to up our operational game is a continual arena of development to include in areas that historically have not thought that way, like vulnerability management.
So how long has Expel been around?
Let's see, we were founded in 2016, and then we first came to market with sort of 1.0 of Expel at the beginning of 2018. So we've been in existence almost 7 years, in market just over 5.
And how does Expel help remedy the landscape as you've just described it?
Sure. So if we think about the threat side of things, which is where Expel was born, is focused on sort of managed detection and response, but we use a technology-centric approach as opposed to just people. A few things. One is we've really focused our technology and our process around dropping those cycle times from alert to fix. So alert to fix in a few days, unacceptable. A few hours, unacceptable. You've got minutes. And so that's one arena, is true operational excellence driven by technology to get those kinds of outcomes. It's providing capabilities around new attack surfaces as they evolve, so not just traditional sort of domain of MDR, but actual cloud proficiency, whether you're talking cloud platforms, whether you're talking SaaS applications, that's where your stuff is. And so your detection and response protection umbrella should extend across all of your assets. You have to then adopt, every time Amazon changes how cloud works at every reInvent, you've got to be there, whether we're talking Lambda, whether we're talking Kubernetes. And so that's another domain. And then lastly, I'll say on the threat side of things, we've really focused on being able to operationalize all the things our customers have invested in. And so I think we integrate with over 115 different technologies today across all those domains, sort of traditional security, cloud platform, cloud SaaS, et cetera. And we're producing new ones every single day because that's the landscape. Like, go walk the show floor at RSA. I haven't seen the logos out there or the types of products decrease in the entire time I've been coming here, and I've been doing this stuff for over a quarter century because I'm old. And so I think that's necessary. On the vulnerability side of things, we can talk more about this. We actually just announced this week, we're bringing out an offering that we call Vulnerability Prioritization, which is really taking that stuff you've invested in for vulnerability management, integrating with it, and making it operational. Like, what do you need to get to right now? What do you need to get to at speed? How do you use that data in real time in your detection and response efforts? So we're trying to make sure that we provide sort of full spectrum coverage across the entire attack cycle.
So let's go a little more granular with that.
Sure.
So Expel vulnerability prioritization, go into some specifics of how it helps customers evaluate their risks.
Yeah, so there's a few arenas where that's going to help. First is that prioritization, but not just prioritization in the context of some scoring assigned by some external entity. Because if you buy prioritization, you've already bought some aspect of our core offering. We can actually look at your operational environment because we're connected to it. We've got your EDR, we've got your SIEM, we've got your network, we've got your cloud platform. And so we can marry up that operational knowledge with what your vulnerability management infrastructure is telling us to give you a crisper picture on, no, these 6 things. I know there's 40 on this list. These 6 right now, and here's why. And so that really gives you a crisper picture that is more actionable and results in actual reduced risk, and we can prove it. So that's one arena where we're significantly helping. Another arena where we're helping is we may be able to tell you about some things before your vulnerability management infrastructure tells you because of our defense community, our other customers that we're connected to, and so we may be able to help you cover blind spots faster. And then lastly, we are doing your core detection and response. We take all that vuln information, we put it in that process, and say there's an incident against a key asset. We know if it's got core vulnerabilities, if there's other assets in its proximity that are now more vulnerable to attack because they've got vulnerabilities, like say there's some particular configuration or vulnerability that makes lateral movement easier. We can tell you, not only should you worry about this asset, but the likelihood an attacker is going to start moving on you is vastly increased because of these problems. And so we can make that data operationally useful, and we do that for you.
Very good. Now, you mentioned how long you've been doing this.
Yeah.
And it's about the same time I've been doing this.
There you go. High five.
And vulnerability management is one of those topics where companies are always behind.
Yeah.
And I love that you were talking about how this helps with prioritization.
Yeah.
Because that, over the years, has been one of the recurring problems.
That's exactly right.
People have talked about. So, but in a general sense, as you look over the last 20 plus years, are organizations getting better at this? Or are we doomed to just be on this circular whack-a-mole merry-go-round?
Let's see here. So I have to fight my last name is Merkel, but my mom's name is McLaughlin, so I'm Irish. I will now fight my Irish nature, which is highly pessimistic. So do I see improvement? Yeah, I do. It does sometimes regress. Like as you have a new attack surface, like again, we'll go back to cloud or sort of subsets of what sits in your cloud, like Kubernetes. That then kind of resets your capabilities a little bit. So maybe you've taken a few steps forward, but now kind of the thing you're protecting changed shape. And now, record scratch and you back up a couple steps. And so, yeah, there's some of that's always, I think, going to occur. I think some of the biggest places where we've moved the needle really are sort of levels of awareness in the business. Having board-level conversations, maybe not about all the crunchy details, but some smarter questions, some more pressure on business priorities. That I think is actually significantly improved over the long arc of time. And I do see us moving the needle on some of these, sort of long-standing issues like vulnerability management. Is there still a long way to go? Yeah, because progress is slow. It is. But I have probably a more optimistic view that particularly because the attacker, the kind of extension of attack activity, because that's not going away, it's increasing every year. I don't mean that through to spread fear, it's just true, drives improvement. You don't have a choice. It's a survival thing. It's not a theoretical thing. If we go back to, kind of the mid kind of aughts, some of that was a little bit more theoretical. Yeah, you should, but there weren't nearly as many headlines. And so I think that pressure forces evolution. And so I'm net positive, but I acknowledge the fact that sometimes it can be hard to see the progress.
All we can do is just keep doing the best we can.
Well, the alternative is give up. That doesn't seem like a good idea, and we're all still here.
Yep.
So are the bad guys. That's not going to change. But we're here. This this video appears to be working, like the sound system worked, like, so that didn't get disrupted. So I think that getting overly pessimistic. Wow, that word is hard.
That was yesterday, actually.
Yeah. Was that yesterday was pessimistic?
No, the power and internet going on the blink.
Oh, did it?
At least in this little corner of the universe.
That wasn't me. as far as you know.
So it's been a pleasure catching up with you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Fantastic, you too.
And the same to all of you. Hope you're enjoying the show or enjoying whatever you're doing wherever you are.